In this video, we're going to walk through a search engine optimization research and content strategy workflow for YouTube content. Just to give you a brief overview of how the workflow works, it starts off with a manual trigger that's going to pull information from Google Sheets. They're going to pass that information on to two simultaneous SERP API calls, one for Google Search and one for YouTube Search. That information is then going to be brought together with a merge node, parsed and cleaned up with a code node, passed on to our data analyst agent. Its role is ultimately going to be to sift through all of the information and determine the best pathway forward. In this case, and we're going to review this more, you want to use a powerful reasoning agent. In this case, I'm using Gemini 2.5 Flash. That information is then going to be passed on to our content strategist agent to create the derivative text content. In this case, I'm using a cheaper Flash model, Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. The output of both of the simple LLM chains is then going to be passed into JavaScript code nodes for cleanup. We're going to merge everything and then re-upload it back into Google Sheets. Now, just to provide a high-level overview of the importance of SEO and why this workflow is so practical, you can use this in two different ways. So you may have already created content and now you're trying to figure out the best way to actually market that content, or you're actually using this in the ideation phase where you have not yet created the content and you really just have a search query or a topic that you want to investigate further that you want to validate with data. And so that's the importance of using the SERP API calls. Now, SERP API is a great free tool. They have a variety of different API calls that you can use, and it includes 250 searches per month for free. So in this case, we're going to be using the YouTube search engine results, and we also get access to the Google search engine results as well. You can read through the documentation to figure out how to best configure it. But ultimately, in the context of this workflow, it's so practical to be grounding any strategy that you have with validated research. And then ultimately, we're going to pass it off through our two agents. One's going to be focused on doing the analytical work and trying to figure out the best pathway forward. The second is going to be more on creating derivative text content based off of that information from the first LLM chain. And then everything's going to be structured, cleaned up, and brought back to our Google Sheet so it's easy to read and have everything in one spot. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we can expect here. So you're going to start off with a search query and a location, and then you just mark the status as pending. From there, we'll get a timestamp as to when we actually ran this workflow, which is important because obviously content is being uploaded and changed on a regular basis. This is going to be the output that we get from the reasoning agent that's specifically configured around the analytical work. So we're going to get a recommendation. So based off the search query that we put in, how should we proceed? Should we proceed at all? Is it too saturated? Should we proceed with a shift? It's going to provide a confidence score and its reasoning. So in other words, why did it give its recommendation? How confident is it in its recommendation? And just breaking that down in plain English to explain how it arrived at that conclusion. And I think this is a very important auditing step that you should include in any of your workflows to better understand how the model is actually thinking through the problem. We then get market signals. And then finally, all of this information is going to be passed off to our marketing content strategist. And this LLM chain is predominantly focused on derivative text content. And so you can tweak this however you want. So if you're not necessarily focusing on YouTube content, so maybe the YouTube titles aren't as relevant, but you actually want a blog post, you can just configure the prompt to output text that is more meaningful to the SEO content strategy that you're focusing in on. So now we're going to walk through the entire workflow. And in this case, I'm actually using it for the video that I'm creating right now. So I put in the keywords, build n8n SEO research and strategy for YouTube content workflow, and then I've marked it for the United States. So we're going to come back here, we're going to execute the workflow. So it's really quick. I think the only part that is going to take some time, just considering the amount of tokens and reasoning that's actually required, is going to be on this data analyst step. So you're seeing that it's taking quite a bit of time to actually work through that. And then this information from the data analyst, the content strategist, and all the way through should run through very fast. And then all the information is going to be uploaded back into Google Sheets. So you can see here, the actual output that we got, we have the recommendation to proceed. The current topic aligns well. 85 is the confidence score. We then have the terminology check reveals strong market preference for practical outcome-oriented terms directly aligned with the user's topic. The presence of a Reddit result in the top Google organic results suggests community interest and potential content gaps. So again, I've designed this in a way, and I think it's important to understand that in any workflow that you're designing, prompt engineering is so critical to get right. So just to give you an overview of the prompt that we're using for the data analyst LLM chain, its mission is to analyze the data to determine the market reality of this topic for YouTube technical tutorials aimed at business owners and freelancers seeking practical utility and upskilling. So that's more of like the mission statement of the YouTube channel that I'm focusing in on. It then does a terminology check, a saturation check, and a velocity check. And this is just ultimately how it's taking the data that it's gotten from the SERP API calls and thinking through what do we have here and how can we actually apply this in the context of creating content, right? So the terminology check is to compare the exact words and phrases in the user input topic against the language used in the top 5 most viewed YouTube videos. We're going to do a saturation check. So we're actually going to look at the top 5 Google organic results to see if there's anything related to communities and forums like Reddit or n8n community. And the importance of this is really to notice if there's content voids. So is there a very high demand for a specific problem or topic? It's a high opportunity, but because there aren't YouTube videos that are surfacing, it's a very clear indication that there's a void and this is worth pursuing. And then the velocity check is to kind of gauge, like, are there videos that have recently been released answering this specific search query? Are they trending? Are they recently created? And how relevant is that in the context of this overall search engine optimization strategy? Then it gives us our verdict, right? So again, as I mentioned before, how to proceed, the confidence score, and then the market signals for the content. So the dominant outcome terms to focus in on, evidence of a contact void, and then we'll also get the momentum indicator. So it'll actually pluck out the top YouTube video for this particular content that's the most relevant. And we can use that as a bit of a gauge to see, is this worth kind of proceeding with? So going back to the output that we have here, there's really no pivot strategy that's necessary. This exact chain that we're using for this query is spot on. And so I can actually trust that the derivative text that we have here should do quite well for this particular topic. And so we have YouTube titles, thumbnail text, description hook, and social teaser. And so for me, this is a very quick, effective, and ultimately free solution that I can use to help me in my ideation process as I'm creating YouTube content, or after I've already created a video and I'm trying to figure out the best way to actually position it.